Welcome to the deep dive. Today, our prehistoric puzzle takes us down to Argentina, late Cretaceous period.
Yeah, roughly, what, 94 to 90 million years ago.
Exactly. And we're digging into a really interesting dinosaur, Aoniraptor libertatum. We've got the scientific abstract, the original one, and Wikipedia to guide us.
Mm-hmm.
So the mission is basically to figure out what makes this southern thief, that's what the name means, what makes it unique, and, how it changes our view of the Megaraptor group.
Right, because Aoniraptor's discovery, it's another piece from the Winkle Formation, which gives us this great window into that specific time and place.
So how did it fit in? What does it tell us about how these, big, probably quite agile predators evolved?
Well, the story kicks off back in 2010. Matthias Mata, he was out on the Violante farm
Right, in Argentina.
in Argentina, yeah, and he found this partial skeleton. But it took a while, until 2016, for the formal description to actually come out.
It really makes you appreciate the sheer amount of work involved, doesn't it? Just from finding a few bones to actually understanding the animal.
Oh, absolutely. It's incredibly meticulous, finding them, carefully getting them out, preserving them, and then the analysis, putting it all into context. It takes time.
And the name Aoniraptor libertatum, it's got layers.
It does.
Aoni, that's Tehuelche for south.
Yeah, from the indigenous language there. And raptor, well, that's Latin for thief or plunderer, so southern thief.
And libertatum.
Libertatum is Latin for freedom. That was chosen to commemorate the bicentennial of Argentina's independence, which was declared back in 1816, though the name connects to the 1810 start of the revolution.
Huh. So you get geography, inferred behavior, and national history all wrapped up in one name. That's pretty neat.
It really is. It kind of grounds these, ancient discoveries in the here and now and the places and cultures where they're found.
Okay, let's talk size. How big was this southern thief?
Estimates put it around maybe up to 6 meters long, so roughly 20 feet.
20 feet. Okay, so not like T-Rex huge, but definitely a large predator. Think, what, a big SUV maybe?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Certainly big enough to be a serious player in its ecosystem.
Yeah.
A top predator, most likely.
You can sort of picture it, can't you? What it might have hunted, who its competition was.
Definitely. It starts to paint a picture of that late Cretaceous world in Patagonia.
Right, so let's get into the nitty-gritty, the classification. We're talking Eukaryota, Animalia, Chordata, all the way down to Theropoda.
Yep, a meat-eating dinosaur.
And then specifically within Theropoda, it lands in this clade. Megaraptora, genus Aoniraptor, species Aoniraptor libertatum, described, as you said, by Mata and colleagues in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
So this Megaraptora group, what's the big deal? Why is that significant?
Well, the Megaraptorans, they're a bit of an evolutionary puzzle. They're this group of mostly Cretaceous theropods,
Yeah.
and figuring out exactly who they're related to among the other big theropod groups. It's been tricky. A lot of them have these enormous claws on their hands. Really distinctive. Suggests a pretty unique way of hunting.
Ah, right.
So finding Aoniraptor and consistently placing it within Megaraptora helps, solidify our understanding of the group itself and its members.
And the evidence for putting there comes mainly from the holotype specimen, the original bones found.
Exactly. That's specimen MPCA-PV 8/441 through 8/425. It sounds technical, but it's basically a specific set of tailbones.
Okay, what kind of tail bones?
It includes the very last sacral vertebra, that's the one fused to the hips right before the tail starts. Then 6 vertebrae from the base of the tail, the proximal ones.
Proximal meaning closer to the body.
Right. And then 4 from the middle of the tail, and 5 of those chevron-shaped bones that hang underneath the tail vertebrae. They're called hemal arches.
Wow. It's amazing how much information you can get from just, a section of the tail.
It really is.
Yeah.
Tail vertebrae, especially the base, they often preserve really well, and they have specific features, bumps, and shapes, and internal structures that are like anatomical fingerprints. Paleontologists use these to compare different species.
And these tail features were key in that whole discussion about Gualicho, weren't they?
Ah, yes, Gualicho, another theropod found in Patagonia, described around the same time.
Right, and initially people noticed some similarities in the tail bones between Aoniraptor and Gualicho and thought, hang on, maybe these are actually the same dinosaur.
Exactly. There was some informal suggestion that they might be synonyms, and if they were the same, Gualicho was named slightly earlier, so by the rules of scientific naming.
Gualicho would be the valid name, and Aoniraptor would be sort of discarded.
Correct. The principle of priority. But things got more complicated, or maybe clearer, with a study in 2020.
Okay, what happened then?
Researchers, Aranciaga Rolando and his team, they look much closer. Not just at the outside shape of the bones, but at the internal structures, specifically the pneumatic structures.
Pneumatic. Like the air sacs, the hollow spaces inside the vertebrae.
Precisely. Lots of theropods have these, likely related to lightening the skeleton. Anyway, they compared these internal pneumatic features in Aoniraptor and Qualicho's vertebrae.
What did they find? Was it a match?
Nope. They found significant differences, really fundamental differences in how those air spaces were arranged within the bone.
Ah, so even if some parts of the tail looked similar on the surface.
The underlying architecture was distinct, which strangely suggests they weren't the same animal after all. They were separate genera, two different types of dinosaurs living in the same region.
That's fascinating. It's like looking under the hood, isn't it? Shows you can't always judge by appearances, even with fossils.
Absolutely. It underscores how important detailed anatomical study is, getting down to those finer points. Sometimes the biggest clues are hidden inside.
Okay, so Aoniraptor is distinct. Let's look at its family tree again, that cladogram from the 2022 Rolando study. It puts Aoniraptor firmly in Megaraptora.
Yes, within Megaraptor, they identified a couple of major subgroups, Clade A and Clade B.
And Aoniraptor falls into Clade A.
That's right. And look who else is in Clade A with it. You've got some dinosaurs from Asia, Fuengavander and Veiraptor from Thailand, and Fukuiraptor from Japan.
Wow, okay. Asia and South America grouped together. What about Clade B?
Clade B includes the namesake, Megaraptor itself, also from South America, plus others like Megaraptor, Orcoraptor, Tratienia, the huge mape, all from Patagonia mostly. And then there's Erostion, maybe a bit more distantly related, but still in the mix.
So Aoniraptor grouping with Asian forms in Clade A. What does that suggest? Does it tell us anything about how these dinosaurs got around?
It could, yeah. It raises really interesting biogeographic questions. How did these related dinosaurs end up on continents that are so far apart today? It might hint at land bridges or periods when sea levels were lower during the Cretaceous, allowing for dispersal between Gondwana and Laurasia, or at least parts of them.
Like ancient highways for dinosaurs.
Something like that. It challenges the idea that dinosaur faunas were always completely isolated on different continents. Aoniraptor adds another data point to that story of potential intercontinental movement.
So zooming out again, finding Aoniraptor in the Huinkel Formation, what's the real significance for understanding that specific place and time?
It just adds so much richness to our picture of the theropod fauna in northwestern Patagonia during the late Cretaceous. The Huinkel Formation is turning out to be this incredible treasure trove for theropods.
We keep finding new things there.
Exactly. And each find, like Aoniraptor, helps us build a more detailed understanding of who was living there, who was eating whom, the whole predator-prey dynamic about 90-odd million years ago.
And that time period, the late Cenomanian to early Turonian, that was a really dynamic time globally, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. Lots happening climatically and geologically. So understanding the ecosystem, knowing which predators were stalking around, it helps us piece together the bigger picture of life during that critical window. Aoniraptor is another key character in that ancient drama.
Okay, so let's quickly recap our deep dive on Aoniraptor libertatum. We've got a roughly 20-foot-long theropod from Argentina.
The Southern Thief.
Right, the Southern Thief, named partly for Argentina's independence bicentennial. Discovered in the Huinkel Formation, described in 2016.
From a partial skeleton, mostly tail vertebrae.
And it's classified as a Megaraptorin. And crucially, despite some early confusion with Qualicho,
Detailed analysis looking inside the bones shows it's definitely its own distinct genus.
yeah, each little detail builds up that picture.
Exactly. And a great example of the scientific process, refining our understanding as new data comes in.
Which kind of leads to a final thought for you, the listener. We see how Aoniraptor, just one discovery, helps redraw parts of the dinosaur family tree and complicates the picture of where these animals lived. So think about this. What other discoveries might be waiting out there, maybe even in the Huinkel Formation, that could further shake up our understanding of Megaraptor or reveal more about the specific world Aoniraptor inhabited?
It's that constant process of discovery, isn't it? The story is always evolving, always being rewritten, one fossil fragment at a time.
Definitely something to ponder. Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive.